Hey, it's Dan here. Welcome to the first album review of the online edition of The Plague. The album I'll be talking about today is Possessed by Evil, which is the second release from the Japanese band Evil. It has been released in February by Nuclear War Now. Evil is one of those bands that falls like squarely in the middle of the black and thrash sound. This sound can be traced all the way back to bands like Bathory and Sodom back in the early 80s. But it wasn't really until bands like Disaster and Niflheim, R Noir in the 90s where it really became more of a solidified genre of its own. It seems like in recent years it has really been exploding. There's been all kinds of bands out there that have kind of been crossing different elements of black metal with both thrash metal and speed metal. You have bands like Midnight and Hellripper who are doing more of the black and roll, a little bit more of the rock and roll punky side of things. I'd say Evil fall more into line with bands like Cult Burial and Butcher, Cruel Force, bands that are just delivering a more serious and like vicious attack with their version of black and thrash. Evil in particular seem to really have found the perfect balance between the black metal and the thrash side of things too. Hailing from Tokyo, Japan, Evil has been around for 10 years already, but it's mainly been in the last 4 or 5 years when they've really been releasing quite a bit of stuff. This is their second full-length album, but they've also released a couple of splits and a live album. The band does a really good job of, paying tribute to the originators of the scene with a very organic and kind of rough around the edges sound of a lot of the 80s bands, but they also have some more of the modern black metal elements, so it's really a nice balance that they've struck here. The vocals are pretty harsh and guttural, but they do occasionally rise to a higher pitch, which adds a nice variety to the music, and it's kind of reminds me a little bit of the early Slayer. There's a lot more lead work on this album than you hear on a lot of black metal, especially releases, and the soloing is surprisingly bluesy at times, which gives it kind of a classic heavy metal feel, as well as just an interesting twist on a sound that isn't otherwise completely original. At the other extreme, though, the band does break out some nice blast beats and like more modern, really speedy riffs. So it's like I said, it's just a really good balance overall of tempos, speed, classic stylings, and like modern elements. So moving on to the songs themselves, the album opens with a 2-minute instrumental that's just a perfect pace setter for the album as a whole. It's a fast song, it's slightly chaotic, but it's well structured overall, and it's got some really cool thought out solos over it. So yeah, it's a great way to introduce the album. Songs like Revenge and Paramount Evil have a pretty classic Slayer, like early Slayer vibe to the riffing and the vocals. But then you turn around and you have songs like Raijin, which is more mid-tempo and just has almost a catchy riff to it. The song In Maten has a similarly restrained kind of mid-tempo approach, and it kind of even reminds me a little bit of Hellhammer at times. So there's quite a bit of, different influences going into this band's sound. The production on Possessed by Evil is very well suited to the band's sound. It's got a very organic, kind of raw feel to it, but it's also very full sounding. So it doesn't sound like a demo. It's very well put together, and you can hear all the instruments and the vocals like perfectly well. Similarly, the vocals themselves have quite a bit of reverb, so that kind of lends it both that old school 80s vibe, but also a little bit of the kind of mysterious, atmospheric, sound that a lot of the more just straight on black metal bands have. The drum sound in particular has a very natural live feel to it, and to me that's important because if you don't have a good drum sound, then nothing's going to sound good. The artwork. The artwork for this is just perfectly spot on. Evil has always had fairly minimal covers, which is nice. I appreciate when bands can like come up with something that's like effective but simple and not like just overly messy and complicated. The cover of Possessed by Evil just has like, it's got kind of a limited color palette. It's got the, the dripping blood. It's got that classic like slasher film style font for the album title. It's just, it checks all the boxes. So yeah, in conclusion, as much as I enjoyed Evil's first album, Rights of Evil, a few years back, this one is just that much better. Like it's a next level album in my book. Just the production's a little bit better, the playing's a little bit better, the songwriting's a little bit more varied. It's just, everything's just stepped up a little bit, and it just hits all the right notes for me. There is no doubt this is going to be one of my top albums for 2021. And if you're a fan of any type of black metal, thrash metal, anywhere in between, I would highly recommend checking out Possessed by Evil. So that's it for this album review. Until next time, cheers and take care.